Look, there have been some absolute highlights, though all of this show is great during the course of the year. And one of the things I have most looked forward to is our discussions, and you have too, clearly, from the reaction we get, the views we get. Our discussions with unreconstructed old lefty commie, journalist, commentator, observer of life, Chris Trotter. So I thought as the year approaches to an end, it would be good to sort of wrap it up with Chris. And, you know, you all know how good or bad his phone line is on any given day, but he joins us. He joins us now. Season's greetings, Chris. How are you?
And a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you as well, Sean, and to all your listeners. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, look, I guess we look back over the first year of a new government. Let's first look at what we can glean from the polls, which are only snapshots in time, as to how the public have reacted. And I get the feeling, Chris, there hasn't been a massive amount of movement, apart from ACT and the Māori Party at the margins getting a bit of blips as they get a lot of news around issues that polarise people.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summation, Sean. I think the problem for the left in this country is that there are a number of deal-breaking issues that the left refuse to alter their positions on or recalibrate, shall we say. And while they take that stance, the people who deserted them won't go back to them. And I think that largely explains the relative stability of the left versus right equation.
Yeah, it was amazing, wasn't it, that conference? They decide to rehabilitate the political liability that is Nanaya Mahuta and capital gains tax.
Yes, well, the capital gains tax is a separate question, I think. I mean, you've got many business leaders now saying that, you know, we really are an outlier. Revenue in this country is a real problem, as all the Treasury projections are suggesting. So I've put that to one side. But, you know, the reality for the Labour Party at the moment, with its current leader, Chris Hipkins, is that he is held in place very firmly by Willie Jackson and the Māori caucus.
Yeah.
And to a lesser extent by Pacifica MPs, two of whom are very prominent in his lineup, Carmel Sepuloni and Barbara Edmund. And so Labour under Chippy can't move from those positions because an attempt to move away from its quite radical position on the treaty, let alone make a movement on transgender issues, would split the caucus, would probably lead to Chippy's dethronement, and would weaken Labour even more than it has already weakened itself, essentially, over the last few years.
I mean, I have wondered at times whether or not Willie Jackson isn't, in effect, the leader of the Labour Party. And particularly as I've watched the connections between the Māori Party and the Labour Party via Willie grow stronger and stronger and stronger. And the day of the hikoi at Parliament, I noticed he was basically just with the Māori Party. They were all, it was hard, you know, to slip a cigarette paper between them.
Well, you've just got to do the math, as they say, Sean. You look at the size of the Māori caucus, nearly half the Labour caucus, and you look at Te Pāti Māori, and if Labour attempts to reposition itself, then here's the question: what stops the Labour caucus defecting en masse to Te Pāti Māori?
Well, yeah, see, I don't think, people might think that would be impossible. It's not. Anything is possible in politics, and there are deep tensions. I've also heard, and I'll say it here for the first time publicly, I've heard rumblings that Barbara might be a future leader, that there is thought about that.
Well, yes, I've heard the same rumblings. Ooh. I've got to say that would surprise me, if indeed anyone is surprised by anything in politics anymore. But certainly I have heard similar speculation.
That Barbara Edmonds could be having a tilt or would get support?
Oh, no. She wouldn't be having a tilt. She would be an alternative to Kieran McNulty.
Ah. And what's the problem with Kieran? He's a bit too white?
I think that's the way it would be presented. Kieran McNulty is the obvious leader of the Labour Party, in my opinion. If you were looking for somebody who could reconnect with Labour's erstwhile support base, someone who has the sound and the look of an ordinary New Zealander, then Kieran's your man.
Yeah.
And I think he's plenty smart enough to be a Prime Minister in the 21st century as well. But as I think I've written before, sometime earlier this year, Kieran McNulty sounds like that tradie who comes to fix, your broken tap.
All right.
He's got that kind of, g'day mate, how's it going? You've met 1,000 of these people, I'm sure, in your life, Sean,
yeah.
And they kind of strobe Kiwiness,
Yeah, I agree. Look, the other thing I have noted, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, it seems to me, of course, and let's be honest, Labour were thumped the left was thumped at the last election.
Yep.
It was, but it seems to me, if you like, the activism of the left has now colonised local body politics. And I look at councils all over the country, so we're against the Treaty Principles Bill and everything. And someone, it might have been you, said local body politicians, particularly on the left, are just frustrated national parliamentary politicians. So they're all practicing to actually do something that matters. And it just seems to me that councils are where the left has most sway and is making the most noise at the moment.
Oh, look, it's not just the left. Sean, if it was, it would be considerably smaller problem-wise. I'm just looking at the Herald's report of the meeting in Tauranga. And the person making the case for Māori representation is quoted as saying, Tangata whenua representation was a legal requirement under...
Yeah, well, that's what Mahi Drysdale's just told us.
Yep, and the Local Government and Resource Management Acts. Now, I'm not sure that any of that is true, to be honest.
Well, by the way, they've got 3 elected Māori representatives anyway, so democracy seems to be delivering the required consultation.
Well, yeah, and one of them has a rhetorical flair which you don't encounter every day. What did he say? I can't find it now. I'm scrolling down, looking for it. It was a panicked voice of oppression, which is a fairly mintable phrase. But honestly,
Chris,
people are objecting to people coming onto a council and having votes without having first gone through the process of election.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like the panicked voice of oppression to me. That sounds like a perfectly legitimate
and reasonable
objection.
position. Yes, it does.
Yeah.